The human race has used oil for its own purposes for decades. Practically everything today has something to do with oil. It's used to manufacture our cars, our plastics, and our cosmetic products. However, this oil can be costly to extract, refine, and transport.
The Keystone XL is a new pipeline that is planned to run from Hardisty, Canada to Steel City, Nebraska, and transport oil from the Canadian tar sands to refineries in the United States. Some of these transportation methods include using semis, barges, trains, and pipelines. Pipelines are the safest and most efficient transportation methods of the four. Unlike semis, barges, and trains, pipelines don't need to be driven by people, only to upkeep and monitor them, which makes product transportation less likely to be interrupted. Pipelines would make trains less necessary and thus reduce greenhouse gas emissions because trains emit from 28% to 42% more gases than pipelines. While some say that the Keystone XL pipeline will harm the environment, it will in fact reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Even though oil pipelines reduce greenhouse gas emissions that are released into the atmosphere from trains and semis, the refining of the tar sand oil that will be transported through the pipe will later make that point moot. Tar sands release 17% more greenhouse gases during refining as compared to conventional oil. This will increase greenhouse gas emissions and render the fact that pipelines reduce pollution by taking away the need to transport oil by trains or semis pointless. And are pipelines really more reliable? Phases 1 and 2 of the existing Keystone Pipeline had 30 spills within the first year of operation, which goes to show that even with state-of-the-art equipment, numerous spills and leaks are inevitable. While there are some benefits to the Keystone XL Pipeline, the dangers of the pipeline and its economic and social impacts far outweigh its benefits.
Steven brought up the new technologies that were applied to the original pipeline to decrease the amount of spillage, but since then there have been new models of devices that are superior to anything used in the past. Some of these safety protocol changes include a larger number of remote-controlled shutoff valves running along the pipeline, increased quality of the detailed inspections and touch-ups, and using a much thicker and stronger steel pipe, especially around rivers. The pipeline will be easier to operate and repair with the new technologies, which will guarantee that the 30 spills within the first year of the original pipe finishing will not happen again. These, being only a few of many changes, will help ensure that the Keystone XL pipeline will be the most technologically advanced and by far the safest pipeline in existence.
How can the Keystone XL Pipeline be the safest pipeline in existence if the majority of the piping is coming from an unreliable foreign supplier? TransCanada contracted the majority of the piping for the Keystone XL Pipeline to the India-based company Welspun. Welspun also supplied pipe to the original Keystone Pipeline, the same pipeline that had 30 spills within a year. Albert Einstein once said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So why should we expect different results from the Keystone XL Pipeline as compared to the original Keystone Pipeline? We shouldn't trust them because TransCanada is using the same unreliable company to build the KXL pipeline. Welspun is unreliable and has been sued multiple times by various companies, including twice by Kinder Morgan affiliates, for fraudulent sales practices and the sale of defective pipe. These Kinder Morgan partners were ordered by the U.S. Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration to replace hundreds of pipe joints that were made by Welspun along their pipelines because of expansion anomalies indicating the use of lower quality steel.
Whether Welspun is reliable or not, the Keystone XL pipeline will bring economic benefits regardless of the supplier. Once constructed, the Keystone XL will bring another 1 million barrels of oil per day to the United States from Canada. This will make Canada's exports to the U.S. increase to 3.6 million barrels per day. While the extra 1 million barrels per day from the KXL will not majorly decrease the amount of dependence on Middle Eastern countries, it will still help the U.S. economy by affecting prices for products with oil in them because of the increased supply. The KXL will also act as a kind of failsafe in case something were to happen to the U.S.'s overseas suppliers, such as a war. With a Canadian-U.S. oil line, there would be a constant supply of oil if overseas ties were cut due to a war. The Keystone XL will not only be beneficial to the United States economy, but also be useful for protection of resources.
Even though the Keystone XL Pipeline increases imports of unrefined tar sands to the U.S. from Canada, the refined product will not remain in the U.S. Instead, the oil will go to the Gulf Coast region, get refined, and then be sold on the world market. The oil is not intended to stay in the U.S., so how could something not being used in the U.S. affect prices of oil-based products? It can't and won't. Both TransCanada and Canada's Natural Resource Minister refused to support requirements that oil from the KXL will be dedicated for use in the U.S. This one fact alone should quiet all supporters of the pipeline who state that the Keystone XL pipeline will greatly affect the United States. But even if the oil was to stay in the U.S., the KXL would still have no impact on gas prices or on global oil production. So if the Keystone exported its oil after refining, there is no possible way that the Keystone XL would help the U.S. during a time where there is a shortage of oil. And if the pipeline reduced foreign oil imports by only that little bit that Chip said, then there is no chance that the Keystone XL pipeline would provide any benefits during an oil crisis. Even on a global scale, the Keystone XL would have no effect on oil markets.
The oil being transported from the pipeline is not all being exported out of the country. 91% will be leaving the country, but the other 9% will be processed in Texas's major refining hubs and used by the United States. The Keystone XL pipeline will run from Hardisty, Canada to Steel City, Nebraska, and then down to Houston, Texas, and Port Arthur, Texas. The approximate amount of the oil flowing in this section is 830,000 barrels per day, which will be taken to the Gulf Coast, then bought by and shipped to other countries, and therefore helping the U.S.'s economy. This means that even if there is not a substantial amount of U.S. profit from the pipeline in terms of usable oil, there is still a very large payoff with the global trade factor.
How could the U.S.'s economy benefit from oil exports when 3/4 of the oil has been contracted to 6 companies, 5 of them being foreign? The profits made by the oil after it's refined will go to those foreign companies in foreign countries, not the U.S. None of the profits from the oil owned by those companies will benefit the U.S., and no matter what, none of the oil will have a significant impact on the world market. So how much profit is to be gained from the Keystone XL pipeline? Not a whole lot. The Keystone XL will not help anyone anywhere on the globe, nor affect gas prices at all. To put things into perspective, there will be a greater impact on people and communities within America and Canada alone than there will be on the American and world economy.
The claim that the KXL will not benefit the economy has been deemed false by TransCanada themselves, stating that the construction of the KXL will result in $418.1 million in economic benefits, thus proving that even the founder and builder of the pipeline expects a significant economic benefit for both Canada and the U.S. The pipeline will affect a larger number of Americans, especially in the Midwest, but not for the worst. Contrary to popular belief, the KXL will in fact not damage cropland. With over 60 years of experience, TransCanada has successfully reclaimed thousands of acres of land without lasting damage, and can and will do it once more for the KXL. TransCanada has also noticed and taken into consideration the native prairie and other significant environmental landmarks, such as the Ogallala Aquifer, and has taken extra caution in avoiding them, and if that's not an option, using the best quality repairing techniques. This will ensure that there are no scars running across America, and that the significant environmental landmarks remain intact.
But are TransCanada's claims really credible considering they're contracting with Wellspun? No. TransCanada will inflate its numbers and make it seem that the economic benefits are greater than they seem, similar to what TransCanada did with the Perryman Group study on jobs. All TransCanada aims for is a target, and that target is profit. The pipeline itself may have a small impact on society, but the extraction of the tar sands that will be transported in the Keystone XL will displace thousands of people from the area just so that the sands can be extracted, destroying the surrounding environment and sacred sites of these indigenous people. Extracting this tar sand not only displaces indigenous people, but also ruins the world's largest intact ecosystem. Because of its size, this forest acts as an enormous carbon sink, which is a crucial part in today's society where thousands of tons of carbon dioxide is released into the air every day. TransCanada wants to trade oil for the health and well-being of the surrounding environment and indigenous population. TransCanada may state that they will restore the area around the pipelines, but the environmental effects of extracting the tar sands underneath the boreal forest will damage the environment to great lengths. TransCanada values the short-term profit that comes from the Keystone XL project more than the environmental benefits that accompany the boreal forest.
In the end, the Keystone Pipeline has its pros and its cons, but the economic benefits from the trade and strengthened relationships far outweigh the possible problems. The KXL won't leave lasting scars on the Earth except for some damage to the boreal forest, which is located above the tar sands, but that is only a tiny percent of Canada's forests. The United States should approve the construction of the KXL in order to guarantee more trading goods and other economic benefits while ensuring the absolute least amount of environmental and social damage.
Overall, the Keystone XL pipeline shouldn't be built, and Obama should not approve it because the impacts of the pipeline crush the benefits of it. There might be some benefits, but for many Americans it will have a negative impact. The pipeline should not be approved because of the lasting impacts and risks it places on the environment and American society.